We had been married 3 years, and except for those few days of my period, Victor and I were intimate almost every day. At first I thought I was the happiest woman in the world. My husband was not only capable but impressive in other ways too. But as time went on, I began to feel weary. Wife, I'm a normal man, it's normal to have needs. I have a lot of pressure at work, I hope you can help me relieve it. I touch you every night, doesn't that prove I love you? I give you everything of mine. I could refuse once or twice, but after 3 years I woke up every morning feeling exhausted. There were all kinds of bruises and marks on my body, because we had a habit of drinking to liven things up. But I can't hold my liquor, one drink and I'm out, so my recollection is hazy. Every night lying in bed, looking at my virile husband, the refusal would rise to my lips and then be swallowed. He was so eager, as if he couldn't feel my torment. Tonight, I finally made up my mind. I slipped a little sleeping pill into his drink. Just a little, not an excessive dose, but enough to make him fall asleep in 2 or 3 minutes. I knew it was wrong, but I really couldn't take it anymore. I need rest, my genitals hurt every morning, clear proof of how brutal his actions can be. 3 years of excessive sex have almost wrecked my body. Honey, I love you, marrying you is the blessing I earned across 3 lifetimes, Victor coos, sweet talk he uses before every encounter. Victor looks refined and treats me well. In just a few years his company has flourished, giving our family a comfortable life. All the promises he made to me before we married had come true. You could say that, apart from an especially strong sex drive, he had no other flaws. But my body really couldn't take it anymore. Otherwise I wouldn't have resorted to such a drastic measure. I silently swore to myself that I would make it up to him tenfold later. I watched him finish his drink and felt a long sigh of relief. The drug should take effect in a few more minutes. Aren't you drinking? What's wrong today? You look kind of pale. Victor stared at me, looking a little puzzled. I'm fine, I'm just a bit tired. I avoided his questioning gaze and forced the glass up to my lips. Wait here for me, I'm going to take a shower. Victor kissed my forehead, then stood and walked toward the bathroom. Because of that small interruption, I hadn't finished my drink. Seconds ticked by and my anxiety grew. Listening to the sound of running water from the bathroom, the drug's timing was almost right. Sure enough, there was the sound of something heavy hitting the floor from inside. I hurried over and opened the bathroom door. Honey, what's wrong? As I went in, I saw Victor collapsed on the floor, his eyes glassy, looking like he was about to fall asleep. You. Victor looked at me with surprised eyes, with a few strands of ferocity mixed in. His gaze frightened me and I trembled as I asked, Honey, are you okay? Only then did I realize he hadn't been showering, he was fully dressed. The water sound had only been a ruse. What did you put in my drink? Victor splashed a handful of cold water on his face and glared at me viciously. I had never seen him like this before and instinctively took a step back. I lowered my head guiltily, unable to meet his gaze. Just what? He came up to me, gripped my hand hard, looking down at me from above. I'm asking you, why did you drug me? I had never known someone who looked so refined could be so terrifying when angry. Fear made my eyes brim with tears instantly. I'm still in pain down there, I just didn't want to have sex with you tonight. So you drugged me? You're trying to murder your own husband. Victor tightened his hold on my hand and I flinched, a cold sweat breaking out. You make me sick. You're just a whore. Victor's words pierced my heart. I never expected such things to come out of his mouth. I looked up at him and saw the revulsion in his eyes, real and unmistakable. If he despised me this much, why was he still with me? Were all the sweet moments between us lies? Tears betrayed me and streamed down. I wrenched my hand free and cried hoarsely, How can you say that about me? We are married. Victor sneered and stared down at me with contempt. Married? You don't deserve that. His words were like a knife through my heart, and I collapsed to the floor. My mind kept replaying the scene when he proposed. I will treat you well for the rest of my life. You are my lifelong desire. Why didn't I deserve it? He had pursued me relentlessly for 4 years. He was the one who married me properly. We registered our marriage, held a wedding, even took vows in a church. Legally and morally, we were husband and wife. I staggered to my feet and demanded angrily, "Victor, what do you mean? If you think I'm not good enough, then why did you marry me?" "Luna, there was love between us." Victor wiped the beads of water from his face and pushed his crooked glasses up. "I love you, but I want you to obey me more." "Obey? What do you take me for? Your tool to relieve yourself? You should be grateful. After all these years, you're the only woman I've had. I'm not interested in anyone else." Hearing that used to make me feel happy, but today it left me utterly cold. A man being interested only in his wife should be a good thing. A measured sex life can indeed adjust a couple's feelings. But what is mine? Apart from my menstrual period, I haven't had a break. The worst part is that he's already worn my body down to pieces. Why did you marry me? All these years have you treated me like an inflatable doll? I asked, trembling. At that he laughed like a pervert. "Darling, how naive you still are. You are worth far more than an inflatable doll." I couldn't grasp what he meant by that. What did it mean that I was worth more than an inflatable doll? I had just woken and continued to question him when a man suddenly appeared in our bedroom. He was holding a bouquet of roses. His sudden appearance startled me. Victor moved faster than I did. Before the man could say anything, he pushed him out. He didn't forget to turn back and say to me, "You go to bed early, I'll be out for a bit." In less than a minute the huge bedroom was empty except for me. I could no longer hold it in and broke into a wail, crying until it felt like my heart would split. In all the years we've been married, this was the first time I'd been so sorrowful. From today on, I would have to reassess the person who sleeps beside me. Whether he is an angel or a devil, I intend to expose his true face. I hadn't slept a wink last night. Victor came home at 6 in the morning and even brought me breakfast. He arranged a bouquet of bright roses in a vase. It was his habit every morning when I woke up, there would be roses on the bedside table. He said they were proof of his love for me. But after what happened last night, it was hard for me to tell which of his words were true and which were lies. "Want me to help you shower?" I hadn't slept all night and felt utterly disheveled. Victor, as usual, came up to me and pressed a kiss to my forehead. "I'm sorry, I didn't consider your feelings. I apologize." His voice was so earnest, as if the person from last night wasn't him at all. "I'll be gentle from now on. If you don't want it, I would never force you. I love you. For this family, I'm willing to do anything." Victor murmured sweet nothings, but I didn't want to hear a single word. I pushed his hand away and, exhausted, walked toward the bedroom. "Get some rest. I'm off to work." Only when I heard the front door close did I feel like I was awakening from a dream. If it weren't for the bruises Victor dug into my arm, I would have suspected last night was only a dream. Waking up, the house still wore the air of a happy, loving home. But I knew there was no going back. Propping up my sleepless body, I rushed into the study. I could usually come in here whenever I wanted, but I'm not in the habit of rifling through other people's things, even if that person is my husband. I knew all of Victor's passwords. I opened every drawer and rifled through the documents inside. But I'd been too naive. How could Victor possibly leave any evidence? Whether files or the computer, everything was scrubbed clean. Maybe I was overthinking it. Was Victor really just overtaken by libido? But what about the man from last night? How did he suddenly appear at our house at that hour? And the roses in his hand? So many questions crowded my mind with no answers in sight. I kept telling myself to stay calm, calm down, this must be more complicated than it seems. Apart from our sex life, Victor granted me almost every wish. This house is in the suburbs. Within a 10-mile radius there might be only this one villa. I used to wonder why, with Victor's company so far away, he insisted on moving us here. Only now did I realize this villa was nothing but a prison. I didn't dare think further, just the thought made every hair on my body stand on end. And I discovered something even more terrifying. I couldn't log into the home security system. Staring at the inaccessible feed, my mind suddenly shot to one place. The basement. I had only been down there once, back when we first moved in. It was far too dim, and I clumsily tripped over some junk. I still remember Victor helplessly carrying me back out. "Leave all this clutter to me from now on, you just enjoy life," he had said. Now I stood again at the basement entrance. To my surprise, it required a password to get in. The door had a special setup. If the wrong code was entered, it sealed completely and would notify the owner who attempted the entry. It would only reopen after identity was fully confirmed. I stood at the basement threshold, racking my brain. Although I knew all of Victor's passwords, after what happened last night I wasn't sure any of them would work on this door. And I had only one chance, one shot. If it's wrong, so what? It might not be anything important, I told myself and typed in a code, waiting for the result. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Proof of Victor's infidelity? But I was quite sure he hadn't cheated. If a man still has the energy to cheat when he's sleeping with his wife every day, I'd have to admire him. A single beep, the password was correct. I was deliriously pleased. I hadn't expected a random guess to work. My hand gripped the handle, my emotions a jumble. The code I'd just entered was the date Victor and I registered our marriage. I didn't feel like lingering on my emotions, because I discovered the basement walls plastered with my intimate photos. Can you imagine that scene? A space neither big nor small, covered with your pictures. Some of me in sexy uniforms, some wearing only underwear, and the most terrifying of all, a photo of me lying on the bed completely naked, with several pairs of men's shoes lined up at the bedside. I had no memory of any of those photos. I'm not someone who likes taking intimate pictures. Although I would sometimes agree to Victor's requests to wear sexy clothes, in my recollection I'd never posed for photos. I trembled uncontrollably, struck by a fear I'd never known before. In the center was a computer with no password. I pressed a key and a video of me entangled with a man popped up. In the video I was unconscious, while that disgusting man kept unleashing his animal instincts on me. The face was both familiar and alien, the man I had just seen last night. There was more on the computer than just that clip. Scrolling down revealed many more, all kinds of nude photos of me. There was more than one man in intimate shots with me. Looking at the private images flooding the screen felt like being inside a massive porn site. And the site's leading woman was me. I had never imagined the truth could be like this. My husband, he had men sleep with me and recorded it. My stomach churned and heaved, waves of nausea rising to my chest. I couldn't stop vomiting. I brought up everything I'd just eaten, and still the dry retching wouldn't cease. No wonder my lower body hurt so much every morning, so this was the truth. My first reaction was that I had to call the police. I would make these people pay. This was rape. Just as I pulled out my phone, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Before they reached the door, a voice I knew all too well called out. "Darling, why are you being so disobedient? You're making this really difficult for me." Victor appeared in the doorway, still wearing that cultivated, genteel look. A smile that chilled me framed his face as he walked toward me step by deliberate step. I kept backing away and, without hesitation, dialed the authorities. Before Victor could snatch the phone from me, I quickly and briefly gave our address, begging the police to come immediately. Victor sprayed something in my face, the world swam and I fell to the floor. In the last second I could remember, I thought I heard Victor say, "Darling, go to sleep. When you wake up, it will be fine." 3 days later. Those 3 days, it's hard to imagine how I survived them. I had just returned from the hospital, the doctor's words still echoed in my ears. "Ms. Luna, you have schizophrenia. You can experience hallucinations and delusions, that is, what we commonly refer to as a mental illness. The police had come 3 days earlier but found nothing. The basement was just a cluttered storage area. There were no photos or videos like the ones I had seen. But the officers did find psychiatric medication in the drawer of my bedside table. They tactfully had me come to the hospital. Over 3 days, Victor took me all over the place. After repeated examinations, the doctors confirmed that I did indeed have a mental illness. I told them everything I had seen, but nobody believed me. They chalked it up to my delusions. You don't believe me, but surely you'll believe what they say, right? Victor crouched in front of me, holding my hand, and said softly. The nightmare from 3 days ago still clung to my heart. I pulled my hand back, rejecting his intimate touch. Since you had the miscarriage a year ago, your mind has been unfocused, you often get paranoid. I thought that once you took medication you'd change. I didn't expect it to get worse now. Hearing these words, it all came back to me in a haze. A year ago I had a miscarriage. After that I started shutting myself in every day and even quit my job. Wife, you know why I have to touch you every day. Victor looked straight into my averted eyes and said slowly, word by word, because you want another child. I stood up, his words looping through my mind. Because of the miscarriage, I was desperate to have another child. Everything sounded reasonable. Wife, I love you. As long as you're happy, I'll do anything. Victor hugged me from behind and whispered his confession. Now I even doubted whether I really had a mental illness, whether it was all just my imagination. There were no private photos. After all, what man would tolerate others sleeping with his wife? I began to accept it all, to accept the fact that I had a mental illness. I complied with taking all kinds of medications for mental illness, hoping they would improve my condition. A month had passed since the last incident, and during that month I obeyed Victor without question. Victor stayed home with me every day, inseparable from my side. If he told me to go to the hospital, I went. If he told me to take medicine, I took it. In that month we had sex countless times, sometimes when I was sober, sometimes when my mind was foggy. In the fog I could barely make out a figure, unable to tell if it was a man or a woman. Victor said we still couldn't have a child, that once I got better we could start trying. It was as if it had all been my nightmare, the dream ending and reality resuming. I was still the same wife living in a luxurious villa, wearing designer clothes. Maybe my disguise was working. Victor no longer controlled me so tightly. He had his own career, a company with a pile of matters waiting for him to handle. I secretly contacted a private detective and asked him to follow Victor for me. As long as you help me with this, you won't be short of money. You must be especially careful. Victor is very alert. If he finds out I've hired someone to follow him, we'll both be finished. The detective was introduced by a friend and was said to be a veteran, in the business for many years. He was a man in his 30s. He took the photos of Victor and said, "Don't worry, surveillance is my trade. No matter how alert he is, I have ways to deal with it." I told him my requirements. No matter what Victor did, even small things like going to the bathroom, he had to report to me. If anything seemed off, he was to call me immediately. I bought an anonymous SIM card on the black market and a new phone. My own phone might be bugged, so I took no chances. I also discovered my phone had been tracked. I prepared 2 lines of defense, a detective to tail Victor, and me, under the identity of Mrs. Victo, investigating all of Victor's relationships. While Victor was out on a business errand, I went to his company. I didn't often go to his company, but at least officially I was his wife. "You go on with your work, I'll wait for him a bit." "All right, Mrs. Victo, have a seat, Mr. Victo will be back soon." After sending his assistant away, I rummaged through Victor's office for a long while and finally found what I was looking for. The private detective had also brought me news. Someone was coming to my house that night. I should be ready. That evening, in front of Victor, I drank the milk he had prepared down to the last drop, leaving nothing. Victor pushed me onto the bed and looked down at me from above. "Honey, I really love you," he said. I closed my eyes and sank into a deep sleep. The next day, when I woke up, the room was empty. A single red rose in the vase on the windowsill signaled the arrival of a new day. I didn't feel unwell, but I was certain we'd had sex the night before. Someone had even bathed me. The sheets and covers had been changed, leaving no trace behind. It was no different from before. Every morning when I wake up, the person is always washed, and the bed and room are always clean. As if someone deliberately erased evidence that shouldn't be there. Fortunately, I took down the wedding photo hanging on the wall. Inside was the hidden camera I had put in there the day before. Just in case, I also planted a bug in a pair of shoes Victor seldom wears. The shoes sit in the shoe cabinet all year, but our cabinet is by the entryway. You can hear the sounds of people coming and going. The camera captured Howard opening the door and coming in, and assaulting me. Judging by how at ease he was, it was obviously not his first time at my house. After he finished, he stuck that bouquet of roses in a vase, and as he walked to the door he turned back and glanced once at me lying on the bed, sunk into sleep. Watching that footage, my fists slowly curled tight. I could even hear the sound of bones grinding together. They treat me like a plaything, trampling my dignity at will. Your wife is pretty, sure, but she lies on the bed like a dead fish, kinda boring. Don't worry, I'm already upping her dose. Soon she'll become a raving lunatic, and you can do whatever you want to her. She definitely won't resist. From the bug came their loud, mocking laughter. I wiped away the falling tears. These people aren't worth crying over. I met with the private detective, who handed me several photos. The pictures clearly showed Howard entering and leaving my home, staying about an hour before leaving, with Victor personally seeing him out. The two of them looked like they were just visiting to discuss business. There was nothing to reveal their collusion. And on my end, I uncovered that at the very beginning of Victor founding the company, Howard invested a large sum in him. If it weren't for that money, his company wouldn't have gotten off the ground. Victor did start from nothing and had talent, but not enough for Howard to pour such a large amount into him. They reached some kind of understanding. And I was the victim of it. Victor used my body to win over investors. No wonder he said I was his most valuable asset. He not only exploited my body, he controlled my mind, turning me into the mentally ill woman in everyone else's mouths. He's a scumbag. I'm going to make them pay the price they deserve. Your husband, together with Victor, assaulted me and gave me large amounts of hallucinogenic drugs. Because of that, I sometimes mistook your husband for my husband, and we had intercourse many times. I don't know how many years this went on, but I'm certain your husband did assault me. I found Howard's wife, Claire. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, and right away I showed her the photos of Howard assaulting me. She didn't react much. She was calm and said, I suspected he was having an affair. He hasn't touched me in over a year. I figured there was someone else. But I never imagined they could stoop to something this monstrous. To satisfy their perverse luxury, to do this to you. Mrs. Victor, or perhaps you'd prefer I call you Luna. She sighed, and there was even a hint of pity in her eyes as she looked at me. Luna, as a fellow woman, I will do everything I can to help you. Her answer was exactly what I expected. Before coming, I had already looked into her. Born into a military family, well educated. She had worked at a state institution, and after having children she stayed home to support her husband and raise the kids. The reason I sought her out wasn't because she was Howard's wife, but because she had previously helped several women who'd been abused by their husbands. So what do you plan to do? You have children, right? I asked her. Claire gave a light laugh and raised an eyebrow. Of course, divorce. What use is a man like that to me? She spoke with firm resolve, without the slightest hesitation. But you have children. So what if I have children? Making a mistake is still making a mistake, and I would never forgive him for the sake of the kids. Her eyes flashed with a righteous light. If the children learn the truth, they'll agree with me about the divorce. I have nothing to cling to in this false, perverted marriage. Her words struck a chord with me. Claire looked at me as if giving me tremendous courage. She reached out and placed her hand on the back of my anxious hand, and said with unwavering certainty, Luna, I sympathize deeply with what you've been through. But it's not your fault, it's theirs, and they should pay the proper price. She was right. We need to gather more evidence. I suspect it's not just the two of them. I told Claire my suspicions. Howard may have given Victor a lot of profit. You need to recover that money. It could be what secures your future. Claire had spent the years at home supporting her husband and raising children. She also had kids to provide for. If she divorced, she would be in much more difficulty than I would. Claire winked at me. Even knowing her husband cheated, she still chose to accept it calmly. Don't worry about me. Even if Howard goes bankrupt, the money my parents gave me is enough for me to squander for a lifetime. After leaving the cafe, I felt much lighter. The month of playing along with Victor had exhausted me physically and mentally. But my interaction with Claire gave me a glimpse of victory. At least someone was standing shoulder to shoulder with me. I looked at my hands trembling continuously. After taking so many pills, even the healthiest person would break down. I don't have much time left. If I can't get rid of Victor, I'll be at his mercy for the rest of my life. Turned into an inflatable doll for someone to toy with. When I got home, Victor was already waiting. For so many years, I hardly lifted a finger around the house. If not the housekeeper, Victor would do the chores after work. Even when I wasn't working, he never asked me to do housework. My family and friends all thought I had found a good husband. For years he had been devoted to me. Designer bags, jewelry, choose whatever I wanted. He'd prepare surprises for anniversaries in advance. Yet such an outstanding man would collude with others to violate his own wife in order to profit. Victor, unaware of my thoughts, popped a piece of sweet and sour spare rib into my mouth. Honey, I have good news. I looked up at him. What? I landed that development zone project. It will be completed next year and will make at least this much. He held up 5 fingers, his face radiating confident ambition. He was waiting for my praise, but I changed the subject. Victor, why did you marry me in the first place? He hadn't expected me to ask that and paused, a little stunned. Seeing my serious expression, he wiped the smile from his face. Because you're beautiful, I'd never seen anyone more beautiful than you. Victor reached out, lifted my chin with his finger, studying my face. I remember thinking then that I absolutely had to marry you. And then hide you away, so no other man would see you, you'd belong only to me. He said it seriously, resolutely. I heard nothing but irony, clamping down on the anger in my chest. I deliberately tested his limits, half joking, half serious. Darling, what would you do if one day I cheated on you? Victor's reaction was intense. His face went stone cold in an instant. Don't make jokes like that, you know I can't accept it. His tone was almost wounded, as if he truly couldn't bear it. Why would you say that? Has something happened? He asked, a little anxious. I stood up and stretched lazily. Nothing, I just thought it was funny. Just as I was about to leave, Victor grabbed my hand and said earnestly, Wife, don't make those moral jokes with me. I won't share you with anyone. I smiled and patted his palm. Don't worry. I won't let myself be treated like that either. I turned and went into the bedroom. The smile on my face slowly cooled. The marriage over these years was ultimately a sham. Who was better at pretending than whom? Outwardly I obeyed Victor and life seemed to revert to the old routines. He went to work, I stayed home playing the rich wife. My meekness only encouraged him, he even took me to meet those people. Their gazes drifted over me, and those looks made me deeply uncomfortable. Like a hunter eyeing a cheetah, there was nowhere to hide. I deliberately teased Howard in front of Victor, pressing my heel down on his leg again and again. Howard's look toward me changed, he seemed taken aback that I could be so bold. When Victor went to the bathroom, I batted my lashes at Howard. Mr. Howard, want to meet up tonight? There were still quite a few people around, although few seemed to notice our side, word could easily get out. Howard didn't reply, but his hand grabbed the foot I was stomping at random. Before anything else could happen, Victor came out. His face looked terrible. He grabbed me and marched me outside, not even bothering to say goodbye to some of his big clients. Victor stormed back home with a sullen face. Before I could take my shoes off, he shoved me hard onto the sofa. Luna, do you think I don't exist? With so many people, you two flirting with each other. Victor was really furious, pointing at me as he ranted and cursed. I pretended to be bewildered. Honey, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Why don't you just go and book a room with him? Do you even have any regard for me as your husband? Hearing that, I almost laughed. I watched Victor flounder in fury, and felt a sharp, satisfying pleasure, like revenge. But it wasn't over. I was going to pour salt in the wound. Honey, how can you say that? Do you think I actually go and book a room with him? I stood, smoothed the creases in my skirt, and smiled. Isn't it that he comes here every once in a while to sleep with me? Victor's face drained of color. He stared at me in outright terror. To be honest, his technique is far worse than yours. You. Victor pointed at me, speechless for a long time. I had never used such filthy words in front of him, either in bed nor in life. He probably believed I was a meek little rabbit by nature, someone who wouldn't resist, who would let him play with me. Every night I pretend so hard, I'm dying to scream, but my persona is Sleeping Beauty. I walked up to Victor, and he instinctively took a step back. Honey, you don't need to keep pretending. I actually know everything. I should thank you for letting me sleep with so many men. My words rang out clearly in the quiet room. Victor must have thought I was crazy. And in a way, I was. I had become unhinged. Watching his face go from green to black, I couldn't help laughing out loud. After a long moment, Victor forced out, voice tight with anger, "You're insane, how can you say things like that?" I reached up, touched his cheek, curled my lips into a smile, stood on tiptoe and whispered in his ear, "Honey, did you forget? I'm a lunatic." Victor might have been trying to push me away, but how could I oblige him? His legs went weak and he collapsed to the ground, his face full of terror as if he'd seen demons. I looked down at this powerless man from above, turned my gaze away with a hint of disgust and said coldly, "You think you're the only one who can drug people?" Victor was smart and quickly grasped what I meant. This drug was meant for me. He hadn't expected to end up taking it himself. Pathetic and laughable. After all, Victor was a man and didn't pass out immediately. He scrambled, using hands and feet, trying to crawl away. Then a piercing, tragic scream tore from his throat. Listening to that cry, the corner of my mouth couldn't help but lift. We were out in the suburbs. No one would hear him even if he screamed his lungs out. Victor forced himself to stand, straining so hard his feet wobbled and sweat soaked his brow. He had barely gotten up when he lost his balance and fell again. His glasses, habitually perched on the bridge of his nose, fell off, leaving him looking a bit disheveled. He reached to pick them up, but I stepped on the back of his hand. I was wearing stiletto heels. His screams followed one after another. "Ah. Honey, sorry, I stepped on you," I said as I crouched and looked at him with feigned apology. He lifted his head, glared at me with venom, and ground his teeth. "Luna, I'll kill you." I tapped his cheek. "Honey, you're still that same spirited person I admired, so stubborn." Victor lunged to grab my hand, but I was faster. I plunged a paring knife cleanly into his palm. "Ah." The unending screams made my heart grow even more frenzied. The metallic scent of blood hit my senses. I felt an exhilaration like nothing else. "Call them, tell everyone who ever violated me to come." My voice rang above Victor's head. He was about to lift his head when I clamped the fruit knife into his palm and twisted. Blood gushed out, pooling on the floor. "If you don't want to call, that's fine too. I can cut your flesh off, piece by piece. I mean what I say. Victor couldn't not call, he valued his life more than anyone. After all he'd achieved, he would never give up so easily. He dialed 8 numbers in front of me. These men were either investors in his company or important clients. He used my body to win business for his firm. They were a bunch of perverts. Victor lay on the ground like a dog, perhaps he still couldn't accept it, craving strength in numbers. I saw his scheme immediately. I wish I'd been this smart before. Over the years these men had developed a blind trust in Victor. At the sound of his call they wouldn't think twice. They would come, eager as always to violate me and carry on. The best way to deal with perverts is to be more perverse than they are. I stood at the window and looked up at the distant stars. My phone screen still showed one message, "Go ahead, I've got you covered." I paid no mind to Victor's wound, he wasn't going to die easily, and let him writhe on the floor like a dead dog. The heavy metallic scent of blood filled the room, and that smell only stoked the fire in my veins. Time passed second by second. An hour later, Victor, lying on the floor, suddenly opened his eyes. A doorbell rang at the entrance. Victor seemed to see a glimmer of hope. He couldn't believe that I, a weak woman, had knocked down 7 or 8 burly men. His gaze was fierce, today would be either his death or mine. How could I be so stupid? If I couldn't match them in strength, I would excel in something else. I never fight alone. It's him, Victor. He said if we did business with him, he would let us do whatever we wanted to you. A vicious pack turns on pack scene, 9 men bound together. I sat on a chair watching this bunch of perverts, feeling utterly filthy. He even showed us your photos, said your figure was great and your skills in bed were top-notch. He orchestrated it all, he drugged you and told us to violate you. It is only at the most critical moments that human nature reveals itself. They threw the blame at one another, all trying to pin the main responsibility on Victor. Victor himself remained silent, even now he couldn't understand how I had taken down those big men. I didn't look at them, I toyed with the knife in my hand. The blade was razor-sharp, and my cold face was reflected on its surface. We really know we were wrong, please forgive us, we're willing to accept the punishment of the law. They begged, wailed, utterly humiliated. I stood and walked up to them, one by one they trembled with fear. In contrast to their earlier ruckus, they all fell silent the moment I approached. Maybe my expression was too cold, they truly believed I would kill them. I walked up to Howard and placed the knife in his hands. He was startled by my move and immediately threw the knife away, not daring even to touch it. I was patient, looked him straight in the eye and soothed him, "Mr. Howard, don't be afraid. This isn't your fault. As long as you behave, you'll be safe." Howard, a man in his 40s, was sobbing like a child. "Luna, please. Let me go. I have a 5-year-old, he can't be without me." I wiped the tears from his face and stroked his head. "Good boy, pick the knife up and stab him," I pointed to the man beside him. At my words, that man began to curse, "Fuck, you goddamn Luna, you're trying to make us kill each other." I giggled, it's the most fun to have perverts kill perverts. You've toyed with me for so many years, what's wrong with me toying with you for once? You're breaking the law. Doing this makes you no different from us. The speaker was Victor, a pitiful sight, mangled enough to be called unbearable to look at. I covered my mouth and laughed lightly, "I'm not like you, I'm crazy." Everyone's faces changed color, as if they suddenly remembered I'd been driven half out of my mind by them. I saw their uncontrollable trembling, some were so scared they lost their composure. "I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Tell me what to do and I'll make it up to you." One man took the lead and the others swarmed after him, continuously apologizing and admitting guilt. Standing at the center of that whirlpool, I gave a bitter smile, shook my head and sighed, if apologies worked, what would we need the police for? You let them go, this is between the two of us, none of them have the right to stick their noses in. even at this point, Victor did not apologize. He showed no remorse, lifting his head to look straight at me. His gaze was resolute. Luna, we've been married for years. I know you hate me, I'm the one who turned you into this. You should hate me. Victor rose up in disarray, his hands and feet still bound. But he forced himself to steady his posture. I know what you want to do. Let me handle this. I started this, and I should end it. I'll kill them, then beg your forgiveness, this time I'm not lying to you. Victor stared at the knife in my hand and stepped toward me. Untie me. Hands as beautiful as yours shouldn't be stained with blood. I'll make it to your satisfaction. Fine. Husband, you must kill them for me. I smiled as I cut through all the ropes binding Victor. He froze for a moment, as if he hadn't expected me to be so accommodating. The drug's effect had worn off, now he could have turned the tables and killed me. I handed him the knife. Victor took it without hesitation, turning to face the men whose hands and feet were still bound. His voice, full of murderous intent, cut through the air. I've wanted to get rid of you for a long time. You hurt the person I love most. The others shrank back when they saw him like that, but where could they hide? The space was only so large. He raised the knife and lunged at the nearest man. The others would not let him rampage unchecked, even bound, they struggled and fought back. Still, some were stabbed. Howard screamed hoarsely, Victor, now's our chance, get rid of her and no one will ever know. Victor said nothing, pressing his attack with the knife. I stood outside the circle, watching that group tear each other apart over possession of a single blade. Victor saw me dazed and suddenly landed a heavy punch that knocked me to the ground. Bracing against his blows, I spat out a mouthful of old blood. During the scuffle just now, the ropes binding the others had been quietly cut by Victor. They stopped fighting each other and turned their attention to me. Each of them was like a wolf or a tiger, eyes blazing, gazes full of hatred. Victor pinned me down. No matter how much strength I had, I couldn't break free. My dear, I'll marry you again in the next life, wait for me on the road to the netherworld. He raised the knife and stabbed at me without the slightest hesitation. I looked at the men holding me down and let the corner of my mouth lift slightly. I wasn't going to die. I never make deals with no chance of return. Bang! A gunshot rang out. A stern voice came from the doorway. Don't move, police. Many people were involved in this matter, more than Victor's company. Several other companies were also sealed. Victor was shot in the head and died on the spot. Brain matter sprayed across my face, and the police rescued me. The others were arrested on the scene. They accused me of orchestrating the whole thing. Claire appeared in time and submitted all the evidence to the court, including the footage I had recorded earlier. The evidence was conclusive, their denials were useless. Although I had tied the others up, Victor's death couldn't be completely separated from me. But I had reported to the police earlier, and the doctors confirmed I was mentally unwell. My crime was much less than theirs. At worst I had had a psychotic episode and tied them up. With Victor dead, as his lawful wife I inherited all his estate. I testified in court. The remaining men were sentenced to 4 years in prison. Before going to court, Claire advised me to remain anonymous. After all, this matter was bad for one's reputation. I stood at the courthouse steps, looking up at the 5-star red flag overhead. A woman's chastity is never determined by the hem of her skirt. My heart is clean. I did nothing wrong, so I am not afraid of anyone's gossip or accusations. Because so many people were involved, by the time everything was settled it was already a year later. A year later, Claire drove me to the airport. I watched her with Howard's son as she crouched down to stroke his head. Little rascal, do you hate me? Because of me, your father went to prison, and it might affect your future. The boy had a mischievous look and, when he spoke, a pair of obvious dimples appeared. Sister, my dad hurt you, he should pay. As his son, this is something I should accept. I pinched the little rascal's cheek, said our goodbyes, and left the city where Victor and I had lived for several years.